Hey, Joe, Jamie, what's going on?
Ben, how we doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. One of you is way louder, one of you is way quieter. We gotta.
Sorry.
Don't be shy, Joe. Don't be shy.
We're okay. We're okay.
What's happening? How you guys doing?
We're doing busy, very busy, as always.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Things in the freight world are going well. I don't want to say smooth.
As well as they go. Yeah. It's freight.
Very nice. Very nice. I know it's been a busy couple months. A lot of trade shows, travel, especially for you, Joe. Both on the customer side and the looking for new carriers and partners and things like that. So it's been a good couple months, hopefully, for you.
Yeah, we're getting back to following up on all the trade show conversations, introductions, relationships that we were able to build upon. And it's been a busy couple of weeks for sure following that.
Absolutely. I guess jump right into it, Jamie. What's how's the logistics world these days? What are the core logistics formats that are keeping you up at night? How's things going?
I think things are definitely going a little bit better than they had at other points in the year that we had talked about before. Maybe going back a couple quarters ago, a few months ago, something like that. Fuel is still an issue, as all of us know. Even just filling up our own personal cars to come into work every day.
Yep.
We're still seeing the high fuel surcharges across the board. That lags like a week behind what you see on the streets, so that's a good way to know if what to expect with the fuel going forward. Is if you see it going up at your local gas pump, it's probably going to be going up for everyone else in the coming weeks.
Makes sense.
Trucking is it seems to have plateaued a little bit, where you're still seeing some tightness out there, but there's definitely some pockets of availability opening up. Ocean freight, things are still a little tight right now. There are some folks out there seeing, maybe like a wave of incoming imports from Shanghai and things and other places, ports in the Pacific after some of the lockdowns over there.
Sure. That truck availability, do you think are there more drivers or trucks being brought on? Do you think demand has slowed down? Maybe the two of those are working kind of in coordination. I know on the TCC side, we've maybe started to see demand softening a little bit. So maybe that's played a role in allowing trucking to ease up a bit.
I think especially in the dry van world, it's definitely starting to open up a little bit more. The longer haul stuff is still tricky at times, especially depending on what region to region you're looking at. But I think some of the shorter dry van stuff is definitely starting to open up. Obviously, a good indication of that is the tender rejection. I think we talked about that last time. And we're starting to see those on the decline. And that's usually a pretty good indication of exactly where the dry van capacity is. Yeah. Liquid bulk, again, still slow to meet that type of capacity, but we're definitely seeing the dry van opening up.
I'd assume you'd see like dry van, LTL, liquid bulk ease up or get tighter quicker or faster than like rail or ocean freight, because you can book more or less trucks in a week, but rail is usually a bit of a longer thought process and time process, and ocean freight may be 8, 10, 12 weeks behind as things either get tighter or loosen up.
Yeah, all the truck shipments are really, to your point, much of a shorter term process, and you're not planning out weeks, months ahead of time,
right?
Like you might be for rail or ocean. I think demand softening is probably the leading cause of some of the capacity we're seeing open up, and in some cases that might be a chicken and egg situation where the demand is softening because some things can't be delivered on time, which is causing more availability to open up. So it's kind of a tumultuous situation.
But yeah, then you talk about inflation and rate hikes and all this other good stuff and how that may or may not affect things. I think there's a bit of a wait and see type of deal going on with maybe customers don't want to buy as much material or pre-buy as much and are kind of waiting, which obviously opens up some of the trucking capacity that may not have been there.
Yeah, absolutely. And just again, TLC being as diverse as we are, opens up other opportunities to discover warehousing, repackaging, all those different opportunities that some people, to your point, if they have material, well, if I can't necessarily meet the forecast that we thought we had, now we have to find some solutions for that.
Yeah. We talked a bit before about totes and drums and transloading and things like that. That's been, maybe companies that historically took bulk are now looking at taking a truckload of totes to have as a backup stock. I know things like actually getting the physical IBC totes had been a problem for a little while. Are you still seeing problems on getting physical totes and drums, or has things kind of eased up a bit?
I think it's eased up a little. I mean, it's still definitely, tighter than, we had seen in years past. But I think it's definitely opened up a little.
Proven a bit.
It's like some of the other truckload things, and it's kind of like plateaued, and, everyone's kind of figured out where we're at for the time being, at least.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely helped the market.
Yeah.
And hopefully the receiver can actually utilize said totes and drums. It's nice to have, but not everybody can actually
use them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. We were talking a bit before we started recording. Obviously, Joe, you handling more of the sales type stuff, and Jamie being on more of the operations and dispatching side of things. You each have your own unique perspectives on the freight world and inquiries you're getting and talking to customers. We talk a lot on the TCC side that if, I think more customers, more suppliers listen to whether it's our podcast or other information out there, there'd be a whole lot better. People would be better informed, kind of understand what's going on. As we see things a lot of time far ahead of the industry. So if there was, 2-3 things that you could tell your customers or your supply chain contacts or whoever it is, what are 2 or 3 things you'd love all of your contacts to know and understand, whether it's, a matter of how to make their freight lives easier or, kind of any one of those things. I know you each have a kind of unique perspective on it. So curious to hear what you'd love to hammer home into each of your contacts.
Just from a sales perspective, obviously, the more flexible you can be as a shipper or receiver, the better off. To the point of being able to actually accept totes, drums, opens up a lot more possibilities to what we can potentially do. And in that vein, being flexible to potentially not just do the same route. Maybe there is an opportunity to move it from an ISO import to a bulk tanker, anything along those lines, just given the constraints that, we're seeing even in some drayage requests, that would be my biggest takeaway, is just be as flexible as possible.
Yeah, I think something we've seen recently too is, can you actually not physically unload an ISO container, or do you just not want to?
Right.
Because those are 2 different things. I understand you may not want to, but if that's going to get it to you 3 days quicker, $1,000 cheaper, whatever it is, let's talk about it.
And I think that's a huge point, right? A short-term investment could lead to a much longer-term solve for you.
Yeah.
And some people balk it. Well, I have to do what to be able to unload this? Well, you just open up yourself to that much more capacity, right, or that much more opportunity to be able to receive this product.
Even if it means paying your warehouse guys an extra $100 to run some hose or whatever it is, that's
install some equipment. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, along that same line, you get into even like tank trucks themselves. Even you have, the rear unload versus the center unload, and sometimes that just comes down to, do you have 20 more feet of hose?
Right.
Which could just be $2,000 or something, which is a considerable amount of money for some operations. And it's just how will that affect me going forward? Will that mean that I can get 10 times more material? Because that's something that a lot of people don't think about, is that there are a lot more rear unload tank trailers out there than there are centers. So the availability changes a lot, and sometimes there's some products you can't put in a center unload. So you have different things that come up with that. I guess the other thing that I would think about is just when you're looking at some of your operations from the supply chain aspect, take the time to go through and plan out ahead of time and try and vet different options to see really what does make the most sense, both from availability, cost. Just look at all the aspects of the situation.
Yeah. What about some of your rail customers? I know obviously that's been a growing aspect for TLC. I know I personally have learned a ton about rail logistics and what goes into it and why something takes an extra couple weeks and how backed up the rail lines can get. If you had a customer that was maybe buying 10 truckloads a month and they switched to starting to buy 2 rail cars a month and may not know a lot about rail, what's 1 or 2 things you'd hammer home to a rail customer aside from expect delays? Because I know that's always the starting point, which is true and unfortunate. But
not getting better right now.
What else goes into it that you'd love rail customers to know and understand?
Yeah, I mean, I know we don't want to start off hammering that one home, but definitely right away expect delays. Plan out it if it should be. Someone's looking at it and telling you it's probably 2 to 3 weeks transit, plan for 4, plan for 5.
Yep.
It's
5.
Unfortunately, Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with a lot of the rail lines, there's not too much we can do.
Yeah.
There are some things going on right now involving the federal government and things trying to get involved and help alleviate the situation. But the truth of the matter is that, for the most part, the rail lines are large monopolies.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is what it is on transit time with them, unfortunately. But I mean, aside from that, it can still, as long as you plan for delays, as long as you plan for, different inconveniences that might happen, I mean, for the most part, it's still a good, viable way to get your product delivered to you. Especially if you can take the car in directly. If you have to deal with transloading, it gets a little bit more complicated.
Yep.
Because you do end up dipping back into the driver pool. But I mean, for the most part, it's still a great way to do it.
And if you could take them in directly, and if you maybe get a 2-week delay, but you have a 2-week delay to essentially receive 4 truckloads versus 4 individual trucks, that could be a week delay. That truck could be a month delay, which we've seen a handful of times on certain lanes. So at the end of the day, which delay would you prefer? I mean, 2 weeks to end up getting 4 trucks.
Yeah,
doesn't sound like a bad deal.
And especially if you're utilizing rail, you're probably from point A to point B is a pretty long distance, so you instantly open yourself up to way more capacity.
Yep.
In that regard. It is an archaic system, unfortunately. To Jamie's point, they're trying to build some better infrastructure. The communication can be challenging, but again, that's a much more efficient way to move large quantities if you have that. I don't need it tomorrow.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah. I'm sure they answered a lot of these same questions. A couple trade shows coming up here in the next couple weeks. I think you'll have some travel coming up.
Yeah, so I'll be down in Charleston end of the month for the Chem and Agro show down there, and going to be having a child in July, so might be hitting
coming up fast.
Very fast. So probably hitting the pause on any immediate shows, but that's the one on the purview right now.
Yeah, it should be a good show, and we'll be there as well. One of the better shows we do in a year.
Absolutely.
I think it's already looking exceptionally well attended, so looking forward to that one.
That's definitely a great one.
And I know depending where someone's streaming this podcast now, obviously these clips and episodes featuring the logistics companies, on your guys' LinkedIn page as well as YouTube and things like that. So a lot of avenues to stream the podcast here for you guys. It's a lot of places we can find you at.
Absolutely. Reach out if there's any need or anything we can assist with.
Yeah. Well, Joe, Jamie, thank you for taking some time. Good chatting with you guys. We'll see you at the Charleston show here coming up soon.
Absolutely.
And if we don't have you on prior to baby number 2 coming in, congratulations.
Thanks.
And hope everything goes well.
Appreciate it, Ben. Thanks again.
Thanks for the time, Ben.
Thanks, guys.